Everybody, am I on? Hey, all right. Vaughn, you said something the other day that was critical, and I forgot now. But if you, it was, what did you say? Anyway, I forgot. So I wanted to see if you could say that again, type that again, Vaughn. What you had said on the live stream the other day. And I forgot what it was, but I was like, man, that's 100% spot on. Let me just make sure the Rumble is going here. Hold on, just a second. Let's get ready to rumble. All right, one second. Wait, did I not put it on Rumble? Thought I did. Okay. Wait. Where is it, man? I guess I didn't put it on Rumble. Why did I thought I guess I'm not on Rumble today. Could have sworn I did, man. Blanchett, hold on a second. Oh, I guess not. Oh, that's right. Because Rumble, you can't. That's what it is. And Rumble, you can't do it in advance. You have to do it. I couldn't do it 5 days in advance. I had to do it. I forgot. Okay. So no Blanchett today, unless he comes on later, because he is. He's taking his in-laws down to the Social Security Administration to ask. Oh, well, there he is. There's Blanchett. Hey, David, can you hear me? Hold on a second. David, you can hear me. I can't hear you. Are you? There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Blanchett, man, right on. I never talked to you, David. Good to meet
you. What's going on?
What, did you go down to Social Security Administration?
I did. It was my first time there.
Now, where are you exactly? Pennsylvania?
So I'm in Kentucky.
In Kentucky. What part of Kentucky?
Lexington.
Oh, man, right on. Are you native of Kentucky?
Born and raised, yeah.
Really? All in Lexington?
Yeah, Lexington. I mean, so my parents are here. My wife's from here. We moved around a bit, but back home now. So.
Well, cool, man. I was just getting ready to tell everybody that it looked like you might not join us today. We'd have to push off till next week. And then, lo and behold, there you are.
Made it.
It's fantastic. All right, let me close. So you can see how formal this is. I got one of my dogs there, and
That's great.
I got my other dog will be coming up. I'm in my main T-shirt, and I just want to. All right, so David, I have wide open time. If you got a hard time to cut off, you just tell me. But I just first and foremost, folks, we got David Blanchett has been doing financial planning research for hell's bells. I mean, for a long, long time. I've been following Blanchett for many, many, many moons. We've communicated on occasion on LinkedIn and maybe on via advisor perspectives or something like that. I can't remember. But just a good all-around guy. So I can't remember the reason I had talked initially. Some guy was saying something about Monte Carlo, which we'll get into later. And Blanchett was not afraid to take it to him. And then, of course, that guy blocked him. And I was like, man, Blanchett's my kind of guy. He doesn't hold back. And I love that because too many people in our industry is like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody. It's like, yeah, screw that, man. Retirement planning. If people get offended by retirement planning, they can freaking screw off. So anyway, so I want to get into a little bit of a deep dive with David, and then we'll open up for questions later. If you have questions, guys, type them in caps down there in the show notes, so I can see that you have a question for Blanchett. Because if you don't type them in caps, I can't tell if you guys just talk to each other or not. So, all right, so David, man, I tell you, this is great. So you're a native of Kentucky. Your wife's a native of Kentucky, but you moved around to your Air Force or an Army or something like that?
Oh, no. I meant I went to business school. My wife went to veterinary school, but no. My parents were both public school teachers for 27 and 28 years. So we were pretty locked in terms of location growing up.
So you graduated high school, went to University of Kentucky?
Go Cats, baby. Yeah.
All right. Well, they got smoked by Iowa.
Oh man, that was a terrible game.
Big Ten representing against the SEC. Are you going to go for Georgia in the football championship there?
Yeah, I am. I watched both those games. Those were both pretty crazy. So I was disappointed that Michigan lost, but I was excited to see Georgia win. So
yeah, all right, right on. I'm very much looking forward to 2024 when they actually have a playoff for once. This is
Right.
not a playoff. This is silly.
Right.
But hey, it's patience is a virtue, I've heard, and I've been, the freaking BCS and the BCS. Now what we get is all a communist plot to tick me off. Has been the bane of my existence. There isn't a college football playoff. I'm like, just every other sport has a playoff. Every other sport. So.
One other divisions that play college football have a playoff.
Yes.
So it's not just like they can't exist, right?
100%. I'm like every single division 3, 2, FCS or FBS, whatever it's called. I can't remember. But all right. So then you get out of college. Did you meet your wife in college?
We were actually high school sweethearts. So I know.
And she stuck with
very
you.
Original, very original. Huh? But I've been, I'm interested in I've been drawn to the field of financial planning since high school. I did a bunch of internships in high school, did a bunch of stuff in college. I've always known I wanted to be in the field. Yeah, and I've done a few different things. I think I've kind of settled into what I'm maybe best at or the least bad at.
Is your wife a veterinarian right now?
She is. Yeah. She does. We're in Kentucky, but she does small animals. Yeah, okay. And she focuses on rehabilitation. So mostly older pets that are near the end of their lives that need specialty care. Okay,
gotcha. And you have kids, David?
I have 4 kids.
Hey,
3, 6, 7, and 10.
That's it? 3, 6. So
I always joke that my wife wanted to have 4 kids and I wanted to have 2 kids, and so we compromised on 4 kids. But that's it. No, that's it. We're not. There's no more children in our future. So.
I got 4 kids too, man. My youngest just turned 15 December 31st. How old are you, roughly? 45, something like that?
41.
41. Okay, gotcha. Right on, man. So 4 kids, boys and girls combination. What do you got?
Girl, boy. How about you?
I got 2 and 2. The oldest 2 are girls. The youngest 2 are boys. So right on, man. My oldest is 22. My youngest is 15. So wow. Yeah, we're popping. We have Irish twins. Our last 2 are Irish twins. You ever heard that terminology?
Oh yeah. I'm a twin. So yeah, know the term.
Oh, no kidding, man. All right, right on. All right, so I mean, your parents are public school teachers, and somehow in high school you were interested in financial planning. Did your dad tell you about stock markets or something like that, or what?
No, I don't know what it was. Just always interested in the markets in the field. It's never been just investment management. Like I never wanted to go out and necessarily just be like a stock picker. Right. I mean, I do enjoy the portfolio aspect of all of it, but I guess that never has been kind of my only focus. It's been a lot broader.
What was your first gig financial planning oriented? Like Ed Jones knocking on doors or something like that? Or
well, so I did internships at a lot of brokerage companies back when people were called stockbrokers in high school. In college, I did a few more internships. I was at the Board of Trade. I did some kind of internships. I actually sold life insurance for a few years at Northwestern Mutual. I did a lot. I mean, I actually took the CFP when I was 21 years old. When I graduated college, I had like 3 or 4 designations. So I was always gearing up towards this field from a relatively young age.
But you wanted, I mean, I've been reading you since probably in the FPA or GFP, probably 2005 or 6, maybe.
I've been doing research for at least 15 years now.
But were you doing that at Northwestern Mutual? Probably not, right?
Well, no. So I would have been, 15 years ago, I was 25, 26. Yeah. That was when I was like 18 years old. I was actually still in college then. So.
Oh, you were still in college when you were doing the research and writing for the Journal for Financial Planning?
No, that was when. So I was doing an internship in Northwestern Mutual at the time. That's when I was 18. I didn't start doing research until I was maybe and I was like mid 20s. One thing that was actually really interesting and really good for me was I found out when I was in my internship that they would pay for designations as long as you met your minimum sales requirements. Well, there aren't any for an intern. So effectively they would just pay for all these different tests that I would take. And as it turned out, I ended up really focusing on that. So I kind of pivoted away from, building a book and selling to like learning about financial planning. And that really, I think, changed the trajectory of my career.
So you were right. I mean, how did you get published in the Journal for Financial Planning? Just submitted an article to them in like mid 2000s. They're like,
I submitted a lot of papers to them originally, and they weren't very good. So I mean, I'd like to think I'm a little bit better at doing research over the last say 15, 20 years. But yeah, I think one of the very first things that interested me, I'll never forget, was talking about the differences in like a deterministic forecast, so like time value of money, present value, versus some kind of Monte Carlo forecast, and what that means in terms of implications on retirement, on saving, all that. And so that's kind of where I started.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, a lot of the first things I did were, looking back, were absolute train wrecks. But like over time, I would say I got better at it, and here I am today. So
yeah, right on, man. All right, so the first big paper that you got some notoriety was what? Was it the? Well, you tell me. I mean, I don't know what it would be. You tell me.
Probably the first thing that I won an award for, I think, was in 2007. It was the Journal of Financial Planning Financial Frontiers Award.
Yeah.
It was looking at the optimal distribution glide path shape. So if you've got money in retirement, what shape should it be?
All right. And then you got that, and next thing you know, you're being pounded on. Like, David, do some research for us, like Morningstar.
No one ever actually. What's funny is, even now, like, people don't necessarily ask me to do research. There isn't like people that are saying, "Hey, do this." I am incredibly inquisitive. I am up almost every night testing random things, and people are like, "Oh, you get a lot done." Well, I mean, you guys only see the stuff that works out. I mean, there's so many things I do that, I test and I'm like, I can't do that. I get data sets. I don't know. I think I was raised to be inquisitive. And so I just really I like answering questions, so I know the answer, right? It's not that I don't trust people. It's just that if I've spent the time to really understand how it works, what the pros and cons are, I think I can give someone, I feel more confident talking about things that I truly have spent time researching, and I like to research everything. So that's what I spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And I think that paper in 2007 is where I think I got introduced to you, which, and then you started doing a lot of research. How'd you end up at Morningstar, by the way? I'm just curious, like, because you were there for a few years.
I was there for about a decade. So I was at the first company. I actually was with Hilliard Lyons. Now I think it's W.R. Baird. Right out of school, working part of a financial planning team and a group. Then I went to a company called American Trust, Unified Trust, for about a decade too.
That's right.
Yeah. And my wife got into, and so I actually got my MBA at University of Chicago when I was there. I took kind of a break for 2 years.
So you moved to Chicago?
I did. Yeah, I did move to Chicago. So then I actually went back to work there after I finished. But then my wife got into school, to vet school at Iowa State. And the role that I had, it wasn't very conducive to being remote. And I did an internship with Morningstar when I was getting my MBA. I kept in touch, and I was like, "Hey, how do you all feel about me being remote for you guys?" And they didn't love it, but they were willing to try it. And so I was remote for them, first in Iowa, then in Kentucky for about 10 years. And I left about a year and a half ago to join Prudential, or really PGIM, where I'm also remote, working in Kentucky.
All right, gotcha. So you were literally living in Chicago with your wife. Did you have kids back then?
No, we didn't have kids until she was in veterinary school. So I was in business school. Gosh, when was that? That was when I was maybe 27, 28. So no kids until we were like early 30s, I guess. 31 would be about the age. So
right on. And so then you moved back to Kentucky. Now, all right, so I want to go deep into your dive on retiree spending, because a pet peeve, David, so my story is, I've been, I'm 10 years old and you were a little bit, well, maybe 11, but so I started in 1998. I cut my teeth at Vanguard. I was in college. I was introduced to French Fama through my economics professors at George Mason University. And I just, I love the 3 factor, which is now the 5 or the 7 or the 25,000 factor, and the evidence-based investing. I just hate all that crap. Anyway, and I don't mean I hate all the crap with French Fama. I just hate all the industry jargon to try to prove that we're some kind of science. Then I came across, and I'll never forget, that Ty Bernicki article in the FPA in 2005, where the reality retirement spending and the firecalc.com calculator that kind of adjusts your spending downward. And I'll never forget. You're familiar with that. Ty Bernicki. Okay, so Ty Bernicki out of Wisconsin had written an article in 2005 in the Financial Plan, the JFP, that talked about reality retirement spending, where the retirement spending drops as people age. And I'll never forget Jonathan Clements, of all people. And he used to be with the Wall Street Journal, and I forgot that Jason Zweig, I think, took his place, another British guy. But anyway, he said, the reason that retirees are spending less is because they're running out of money. And I'll never forget that. And Ty was somewhat defensive because Ty was just and I don't know this guy, but he was just a regular financial planner. And here's Jason, or not Jason, Clements, kind of, calling him out. And I said, and I remember he's like, oh, well, maybe, but we don't have any evidence of that. We just know that when my running the BLS numbers, this is what I see. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and then a couple years later, here comes Blanchett. You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, that's fantastic. This is because I was like, I remember I said I had a client. I went to high school and college in Washington, D.C. area. And this is when the Redskins were, what can I say, Redskins? Anyway, the Redskins were huge. Like you literally passed season tickets through the generation through your will. And I'll never forget, I had a guy. I said, the Redskins were playing the Cowboys on like Monday Night Football or something like that. And back in the day, this is in probably mid to late 2000s. That was a big ticket, you know what I'm saying? Because of Redskins and Cowboys. I had a client. I said, man, you going to the game today? He goes, nah, I gave up my tickets. I said, why? He goes, because I'm just getting old. I don't want to do that. I just like it in my house. I just don't get out that much anymore. I'm pretty comfortable sitting around and watching football on TV. And it clicked. And at the same time, I was reading your stuff after having been introduced to Ty Bernicki's stuff. I said, there's something here, man. People, as they age, their spending doesn't go up linear, a la the 4% rule. It drops. Now, that doesn't mean it's all inclusive. It doesn't mean, but the models that we're using, that this inflation-adjusted spending on a linear basis, I said, that where's the evidence of that? So anyway, tell me how you came to find that, because that's one of the best pieces of research that's out there that is still not taking over the industry. It's nuts to me.
So, I'd heard, even when I was doing my internships in accounting in college, about this idea of like the really fun, like the slow go, the go-go, the slow go, and the no-go years. And I was like, well, that's a really interesting theory, that people don't increase their consumption every year by inflation. I mean, literally, like the models we use say that you somehow know that inflation last year was like 6%. You can, 6%, like every year, just without failing, you spend it all. And I was like, well, like I wonder what the data suggests on that. And there had been some research done, but what I did is I used a data set called the Health and Retirement Study, and I looked at, well, how do it tracks households over time. How does their spending change? And I think consistent with what you see in a lot of places is that what we found, or what I found, is that it didn't increase every year by inflation. Now it does for some folks. What's really important here is like, yeah, some folks just go crazy, some folks don't. But the average outcome was that individuals do tend to spend a little bit less in today's dollars over time. So if inflation's 3%, they only spend maybe 1 or 2% more. And that really can add up over a 20 or 30 year time horizon when it comes to retirement. And so, and what I did find is that individual expenses tend to tick up like later in life. There's a really important nuance there, though, is that the average expense ticks up, but the median does not. So the median, it just keeps dropping, but the average goes way up at the end, because like 1 in 5, 1 in 10, whatever number you want to use, have some kind of like significant out-of-pocket medical expense. And so I think to me, like the implications there is just that this notion that individuals are going to spend more, it doesn't hold reality. And people say, well, David, to your earlier point, people spend less because they have to, because we're in this retirement savings crisis. And actually that's not the truth. So what you can do in the data set is you can isolate the folks who have just tons and tons of money and aren't spending a whole lot for whatever reason. And what you find is that they tend to spend less as well, right? So it is true that individuals who are over consuming, they drop their consumption by the most, but most retirees tend to reduce their spending in today's dollars over time. I think that's been kind of well borne out in the literature and the research at this point.
Well, it is. And I just, like one of your articles, the retirement spending smile that, Wade Pfau had wrote about as well, using your data. I just had to let my dog out. You go into the now my other dog's back. Okay. You go into here's my other one that just want to, there he goes. Oh, there he is. You can see the big brown eye. He's trying to get a only dogs fans page, only fans, but only fans for dogs. He likes to show everybody his big brown eye. It's fantastic. Very professional, David. I'm telling you.
I can tell.
By the way, you went over the litany of the various articles and studies and everything, and there's there's just none. Maybe one from Italy.
There's a few, and there's actually been a lot more done since then. I think that the individuals that run or kind of in charge of the HRS have done a lot since then, kind of trying to explore the effect. I think to me the key is just that, assuming that you reduce your spending by 2% versus inflation can have a tremendous impact on can you take that cruise at age 65, right? So I think that just kind of acknowledging there's a decent chance that you're going to slow down a little bit. So if you're a little bit constrained, if you're behind, maybe it's okay to take that cruise, just being aware that if things, so I think to me, that's how I talk about that to advisors and retirees is that I think it can kind of shift how you think about spending your savings.
Well, here's what's going to, and I don't want to hold you accountable. You don't have to say this, but here's what pisses me off about our industry. Like the Boston College, the Center for Retirement Research up there and all this, they show these pending retirement crises built on the idea. It's just so freaking, it's bad data sets. And I don't get how it's not just them. It's, this Teresa Giardelli lady. It's, from the new school.
Yes.
All these guys. And I'm like, there's something fundamental. And this is just me. I'm not putting this on David, but I don't understand other than, they're being backed by these various industry groups, the pension, the annuities and the TIA Crefts of the world. I just don't get it. Why are they not using the moderate approach that says, yes, we are planning for a spending adjusted with inflation, but the evidence on that is suspect, or at least just there's another model here. But they don't ever do this, and they're pushing this retirement crisis. And so I had there's a guy named Andy Biggs who used to be the second guy, the chief actuary, or one of the guys from Social Security Administration. I've talked to him a number of times on this channel. Mm-hmm. And his data set is that not only are people not running out of money, 80% are actually content in retirement. So, right. And he was a lot more diplomatic because he's kind of politician oriented. And that I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean he's got to be more diplomatic than I have to be. But I was like, but why? Why are they pushing this so that people still have to dig their dishes when they're 65 when they could retire? What is happening? And it just infuriates me. And I'm not saying we have to say, you can retire with $1, but I'm just saying all the data from our industry is that there's this retirement crisis, and it's just not there. Any thoughts on that by chance?
So we do not have a retirement crisis, right? A retirement crisis, in my opinion, is grandmom and granddad living on cat food.
Yes.
That we have one of the most generous public social systems in the world. Social Security is a very, very generous system versus other public pensions. And so right now, we do not have a retirement crisis, okay? We do potentially have a retirement savings crisis whereby a lot of Americans aren't saving enough for retirement. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to have an okay retirement. Retirees are a happy bunch. One of my favorite surveys about retirement was one that Vanguard did, I don't know, like 5 years ago. They asked all these people, is there a retirement crisis? And half of them say yes. Right. Then they say, well, would you describe your situation as a crisis? And like 10% said, yeah, I'm in crisis. So I think there's this perception that there's this issue with savings. And now I think we can do a lot to improve access to retirement savings vehicles to get folks to save more. And it will mean changes in retirement. But I've recoiled for at least a decade. Someone says we have a retirement crisis because we don't. Folks need to be saving more. We need to be doing things. But most Americans have a pretty good retirement based upon the public systems that we've created for them right now.
That they're paying into. That right. It's not just, we are paying for this. It's not just an entitlement.
It's a relatively progressive system, and that's okay. And that's how most public pensions work. But I think that we don't have a retirement crisis. We might have a retirement savings crisis, and we're doing things as a country to address it. We just had Secure 2.0 pass that would hopefully increase coverage, increase adoption, all these things. So we're doing things to improve the system. A lot of folks, like someone that you just mentioned, wants to burn the system down. Okay.
Yes.
This is America. How can you honestly believe that if you start from scratch, you won't end up having some kind of flawed system? It's just people are crazy. Stuff happens. I think the goal that we should have collectively for folks that do this is to improve our system, and we're making progress.
Well, another thing that's annoying to me is this idea that everyone had a pension in the good old days. It's just not true. Right. And look, we're speculating. Well, I am, but why? What is the reason for that? And I don't know. and I don't need to know, but I'm just like, it's not true that everyone had a pension in the old days. It's not true that there are a bunch of grandmas eating cat food. It's not true that everyone's going to be living in long-term care facility. And yet this permeates our business. It's just the weirdest thing. I had a guy who had like $1 million in his 401k. I can't remember what it was. And his financial advisor laughed when he asked if he could retire at 62. And he'd even ask about his expenses. I'm like, I literally don't understand. I don't get it. And I'm just wondering why it seems like you and maybe Wade, Kitsis, and a couple others, me, but it seems like we're just preaching howling at the moon here. And I just don't get it, man. It seems to me that you'd have a lot more happier people who would engage in financial planning if they didn't feel like they're going to be laughed at if they only have $1 million. And it's weird to me. I don't.
Well, I mean, very few folks have $1 million.
Exactly.
So to me, it's where I worry most is like the mass affluent, like individuals that have been doing what they can. They haven't made a lot of money. They've got something to save for retirement. Like, where do you get good advice today? Like, where do you get high quality, unbiased advice? And so personally, I like the expansion of 401k plans, where there's more of an emphasis on keeping folks in plan post-retirement, because there you have an institutional fiduciary who's creating, strategies and products for clients. And I mean, I know tons of great advisors. Like I've been doing research on the value of advice for over a decade. The problem is there's this massive dispersion in what it even means to be a financial advisor. Right. And so what worries me is, you get people that have smaller balances, and how is $200,000 a small balance? It's not. Right. But it might lead them to individuals that would recommend products and strategies that don't have their best interest at heart. Now, it's important I say this. I'm also a big fan of annuities and products that can provide lifetime income, but it all needs to be like done with good measure. Like, I'm not talking about that crappy product that has a 20% surrender charge and costs 8% a year. I'm talking about like building either good portfolios or whatever else. But I just think there's this big disconnect in our industry in terms of the quality of advice that you would receive across from different advisors. Well,
the quality of the research too. That's another thing that frustrates me, is that the lack of good research like what you do. Now we're just and then you get the not Morningstar, the Market Watch, and they're just basically they hire these interns essentially that they scour the world about finance at Yahoo, Market Watch, and they throw these crappy articles out there that are very clickbaited, and then people think there's this retirement retirement crisis, which actually I did a video and I went back in newspapers.com. I have a subscription to New York Times newspapers and newspapers.com, but you can go in there and type in retirement crisis, and you can go back to the 80s retirement crisis. There'll be no Social Security, the 90s, the aughts, and I'm like, it's odd to me. Like, everyone's worried about Social Security. I said, have they ever looked at the Medicare financing? So if we're worried about Social Security, and I say, how are you going to pay for health care? I'm going on Medicare. I said, there seems to be a little bit of a
bigger gap there.
Exactly right, because Medicare is in a world of hurt compared to Social Security. Some guy asked about like, what would you think would be a good, and this is a very broad-based question, obviously, in terms of a good savings rate. And literally generalized speaking, if someone said, man, I want to have a comfortable, I don't need to have gold-plated tennis shoes, but just a comfortable retirement, any guidance that would say, hey, this is a pretty good number to get started with. Anything on that?
I mean, I would say 15%, and that it sounds really high. That's a combination of your contribution and your employer's contribution. Because the one thing that I just don't know that we can believe in or rely on is that the markets to do as well as they've done over the last 100 plus years. I mean, the U.S. has had like one of the best. We didn't lose World War. I mean, like things worked out really well for us. In other countries like Japan, Italy, and others, like hasn't done nearly as well. And so I think, I think saving more is it creates options, right? If you have saved a lot, if you've been a good saver, you can retire early. You can go on more vacation. And so I mean, like I think there is a balance. Like I'm not like a big fan of this whole FIRE thing where folks are like saving 80% of their pay and living off cap. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I think that saving, maybe I think we will have to save more moving forward given returns, but I would say 15% is a decent starting target.
What are your thoughts on returns? So I use the Vanguard models in my own planning software.
Yeah, the VC, the VV, the VCMM. I think, I mean, we PGIM does them. Everyone does them. I think that the one thing that's really important with capital market assumptions when you're using them in a plan is that they match the duration of the plan. And honestly, it doesn't really matter much right now because the current bond yield environment is relatively similar to long-term averages. Yeah. What worries me is like where we were like a year and a half or 2 years ago with really low bond yields. And I don't want someone to assume that bond yields are super low forever because I didn't think that they would be. I didn't know when they were going to change, but I think that, you know, if you have like, or if for some reason a year from now we've got bond yields that are like 10%, you wouldn't want to use 10% for a 50-year projection. So I think that the key, if you can use like a nearer term rate that reflects the current economic realities, and then a longer term rate for like years 11 to whatever, that's a better way than kind of, you know, always using just like these most capital market assumptions are 10-year, 17-year estimates, just using the near-term estimate for the entire plan.
How about with the equity side? What would you say? And you know, obviously we're not holding you accountable. I'm just, how do you? So I'm a big fan of Bogle. So earnings growth plus dividend yield, obviously contraction or expansion of P's. That's it. But how do you guys with, you know, PGIM or even your stuff with Morningstar? How would you come up with your equity potential returns for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like I think a really good proxy is just, you know, 5-ish% plus bond yields. I mean, like just equity risk premium is, you know, that varies, right? There are times where it's going to be 6% and then 3.5%, but like, you know, I think a good proxy as well, if bonds are giving you 4-ish, you know, stocks should give you 4 or 5-ish, more than that, because they're a lot more volatile, and that's not a bad place to be. Now, if for some reason we get back to a place where bonds are only doing 1-ish or 2-ish, I think you got to haircut your equity assumptions.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, nobody knows, right? Like this is it's all just a fantastic guess. And I mean, you want to use realistic assumptions, but fundamentally markets are uncertain. I mean, look where we are today. I never would have thought we'd have yields move where they were last year. Who knows what's going to happen this year, right?
I mean, the worst bond market anyone walking this earth has ever seen. It's crazy, man. I mean,
when you have a low starting point and bond yields go up, I mean, you're gonna get hit there. You know, I mean, I was talking to my in-laws today. I was like, even if you see the same increase in yields this year, it won't be as bad because you're starting from a higher spot, right? You're starting from 4.5%. So when we hope that yields don't go up, well, maybe it'd be nice if they go up 3 points, but like it was like the worst possible absolute and relative increase that we've ever seen.
Blanchett, if I wasn't happily married, I'd come to Kentucky and give you a big smooch on your lips right now. Except I don't dig dudes. But the reason for that is because this thing called log. You know what I'm saying? So you go from 1 to 4. It's a hell of a lot different from going from 4 to 7. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's like it's not the same percentages. And that's one other thing that ticks me off. All these people, like, I get ticked off a lot about it. I love it. There's so many good people in our industry. I hate the fear mark. I hate it with a passion because it keeps people doing. Look, I love Jesus. If loving the Lord is wrong, I don't want to be right. But at the end of the day, we're not put on this earth to dig ditches for some freaking hedge fund manager named Mitt Romney. We're on this earth to proclaim the gospel. That's just my opinion. You don't have to agree. I don't care. Well, I do care. But at the end of the day, and so this fear mongering is, my opinion, satanic. It's trying to get people to keep, digging the ditches, as opposed to proclaiming what we're supposed to proclaim under the Great Commission. Point being is, when you look at the bonds at 1 and they move to 4, that's a 300%. 4 to 7 is not a 300%, and people don't want to make that assumption. Oh my goodness! It's like no. It's completely different from a logarithm as opposed to just a regular linear thing. What are you? Just tell me about your thoughts on Monte Carlo, because I like Monte Carlo. It's not the cat's meow. I get it. You know what I'm saying? And I forgot the guy's name, O'Day or something like that. Jim O'Day. I forgot. He did a kind of good takedown of it. I forgot his name, but
he does back casting, I believe, is his thing or something.
And I very much like his stuff. But with that said, I think Monte Carlo is the best thing in terms of projections into the future, because we don't know. Hell, we could get nuked tomorrow. What's your overall take on Monte Carlo? What would you prefer if you're not a fan, or is there anything you prefer?
So I would say that I'm very aware that no one knows what's going to happen, right? I think that we need to provide context on uncertainties for clients, right? There's just things that can happen. So what it does is it gives researchers, advisors the opportunity to kind of model what could possibly happen. I think that there are potential issues with how we measure outcomes in Monte Carlo. Like usually the outcomes metric is success rates, and that's an overly conservative estimate. Like just because you fail doesn't mean it just means you've had to make a change when you're 97 years old. So I think that my concern is that, to your earlier point about fear mongering is like if you don't understand how they work structurally, you may target outcomes that are way, way, way too conservative that results in underspending. So I think that it provided our industry with a level of financial sophistication, but I'm not convinced a lot of advisors who use the tool really understand how to use the inputs and outputs correctly.
I completely agree. And then they'll say a 10% probability of failure is the equivalent of a plane crash.
I've seen that exact reference online, and I so the thing is, what gets me is I mean, I'm an adult and I can be a little prickly. Like if you're gonna post garbage and I call it garbage, don't get mad at me because I didn't say, oh, will you please fix your crazy wrong? No, I'm gonna be like, that's ridiculous. Like that is not a correct way to think about this. And so, I mean, do people get mad at me because I'm a little honest sometimes? Well, yeah, but like, it's based upon, to me, I have this thing. My response is usually driven by the quality and consistency of your post. When I engage someone, usually out of the gate, it's a new person, I give them a little bit of slack. But like if someone consistently posts things that I think are intentionally incorrectly conveying information to maybe help someone to make a sale, I'm not going to be as nice. I can't be like, that's not that, so people
especially when they got tens of thousands of followers. You see what I'm saying? I mean, they got tens of thousands of followers, and I still don't know who this guy is on LinkedIn. You don't need to say anything, but just so folks, Blanchett, some guy said a 10% probability is equivalent of a plane crash, and Blanchett's like, what the hell, dude? That's nuts. And anyway, the guy,
I was a bit more diplomatic, but I mean, I was like, that's like no serious academic would ever use that argument to justify what you're talking about. And so I think what kills me is he never said I was wrong. He never, so like if you're going to get mad at me because I call you out, provide some context as to what you're mad about other than the fact that I called you out. Because to me, I'm not like the truth police on LinkedIn, but I think that, but people see these things and it can be misleading. And so, people say, oh, David, you should be nice and gentle. Well, like, no, like he's using this platform to say things that I believe are incorrect. And now here's the thing. If you disagree with me, I love a good debate.
Absolutely.
But rarely when I call some, I don't think it's, I mean, or they have a really good explanation for why they think this and what they're trying to convey and all this stuff. And so that to me has been an ongoing issue, and I'm going to maybe be a little nicer this year. We're in a new year right now, but we'll see.
That's I'm in a debate with a guy, well-known guy on Advisor Perspectives, and I just don't. It's weird to me because he's like, well, Josh, you don't have any legitimacy because you said there's no inflation. I said, I literally never said that. Not sure why you would say I'm saying that. I asked for evidence that retirees spend linear with the adjusted for CPI. Where is the evidence of that? Because we just talked about this, but it's like, look, we can debate all day long, but don't put words in my mouth or don't put something out there that's freaking just, it's ludicrous. I'm not being as diplomatic as you, but that, the fall, 10% failure is the equivalent of your plane crashing. I mean, give me a flipping break.
But the problem there is then the implicit is that you need to buy a product that's guaranteed, right? Because you won't crash. Well, and the point that I made in the link in the Think Advice piece is like, well, you actually can still crash if you buy an annuity. Like technically, you could have a liquidity event. There could be inflation. Other things can happen. So this notion that somehow you've eliminated risk with the product, it just doesn't track true reality. Like maybe like the ways that we model it in Monte Carlo, because it's not accurate, it reflects that. And so I'm not trying to be like negative towards a category. I'm just trying to be more realistic. Like, hey, like that's not how you should convey the outcome. You need to acknowledge the risks of other products that might have guarantees, because there's other ways that they could fail a client.
Yeah, and don't forget, Monte Carlo, what was 95% last year is now 83% because the markets are down 20%. You see what I'm saying? It's like a Monte Carlo is not a static thing. This would Hey, so tell me about going to the Social Security Administration. Go into that a little bit. I'd like to hear. I've never been, and I just want to hear what you did, if you don't mind sharing, and how it shook out.
Sure. So I went today with my in-laws. They're getting near retirement, and so
this is your wife's parents, right?
My wife's parents. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And so I went to the local office. I'd driven by it a few times. I'd never been in before. It wasn't that busy. It was just interesting. And then so we were talking with there was a very nice lady.
Appointment, David? You had an appointment set up?
No, we just showed up. So. Okay. We just showed up, and I asked the lady some questions. I mean, I'm relatively knowledgeable on Social Security stuff. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on the nuanced details, but it was neat to have just to have the discussion with the person there. She was very knowledgeable. She was very, very, very knowledgeable. And then also just them, because it's a very personal decision, right? And I think that there are unique situations when you've got different benefit ranges and ages and health that comes into play. I mean, I'm very much an advocate of delaying claim as long as you can. At least until full retirement age. But then after that, it really becomes a lot more personal. So I think to me, it was no one else. It was a fun experience to kind of see that and just kind of experience what it's like to go there, ask the questions. You actually, as it turns out, I didn't know this, you can't claim that you've got to go either online or have an online conversation with someone with the administration. But it was fun.
So you go down there, and your parent, are they at full retirement age? Are they 60?
They both are. They both are past full retirement age.
Okay.
Yes.
And so is there a spousal benefit too, or just their own individual retirement benefit?
Well, and so that was some of the ambiguity that I wasn't totally clear about going down there, because it obviously affects claiming strategies. But I mean, technically, it appears they're going to each claim on their own behalf, which changes the math in terms of when you could claim and what you can get and all that. So
I'm just curious, did the lady that you're talking to encourage that, or was just laying out there for them to make?
She was very she was Switzerland. She did not necessarily provide any kind of which I think is good. I mean, I think that you could make an argument to go either way. You can claim it as soon as you can because the government's going broke. You can say, oh, wait as long as you can. So I think she was very factual with the information. Right. I had some questions just to confirm a few things, and very knowledgeable. I enjoyed it.
Did she talk about survivor benefits for the surviving spouse at all, or did you have to bring that up?
We had already kind of talked about that. I mean, I had walked them through how it worked, and I had her verify that I was knowledgeable in my assessment of that. But yes, like that was part of the overall discussion.
Larry Kotlikoff, you familiar with him?
Mm-hmm. He's
written a number of times, and I actually interviewed him. One of my first interviews ever did on my YouTube channel, and he talked about how Social Security, when it comes to spousal, widow survivor benefits, how they're just really, really screwing up. And I had a client, David, just last year, and this has been going on for 10 years. Same damn thing happened. That they weren't Switzerland. They were saying you should file, I forgot, on your own record, as opposed to survivor benefits, because you got an extra $100 a month. It was bad advice. And I was like, man, I can't believe these guys are still doing this. So I think it's one of those things that if you happen to get somebody who, it's almost like if you go to Vanguard or Schwab, you might get a good guy, you might get a bad guy. It's just, and that there's no way to fix this, but it's buyer beware, man, and no other way around that. But I'm glad to hear your. Hey, so did you go to a private office, or was it just like a cube where everyone could hear your business?
It was kind of cool. They have so I got there before they opened. Well, the lobby was open, but you couldn't see one. Then right at 9 o'clock, like all these like metal gates for all the windows open at the exact same time. So it was like a store open up, because people that had gotten there, I had to wait for them to get there. So people got there early. They were already slotted in all these kind of booths. But the gate in front of the window was closed. Then all of a sudden, all the exact same time, all the gates open, right? And so then there must have been 15 or so people, but there wasn't necessarily a ton of privacy, in that like it's kind of an open cubicle environment. But I mean, you can obviously talk quietly if it's a private matter. There's probably rooms you can go to as well.
Okay, gotcha. What did they bring up Medicare at all? Is that even part of the conversation?
No, I mean, they had been there before. I didn't realize my father-in-law was actually a number of times for separate issues. So we were just there to kind of really focus on the Social Security retirement benefits.
But when you left, you felt comfortable in your own experience that Social Security Administration isn't there to take advantage of us and steal our money, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I did not, but I had someone that was highly knowledgeable. I think that it's like anything else,
Yeah.
right? Maybe that's an anomaly. Maybe that's maybe the rule versus the exception. But my experience
No,
with this individual,
that's all we can go off.
Yeah.
The only experience we have between you and me is yours, and so far that's successful. What I want to turn it real quick. Are you up? You got a couple more minutes? Or you're up against it?
Maybe like 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Japan. Have you done any research on Japan, David? Okay.
No, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting case study given like the size of their debt, their demographics, and all that. We'll see how things go for them over the next few decades. But beyond being aware of their market environment, their demographic trends, not much.
Yeah. All right. So just, I know you got to go here in a second. All right. Are you familiar with the weapon GPO for Social Security?
So I vaguely my knowledge of the nuances of WEP and GPO were much higher 5 years ago. So I wouldn't be the right person to ask about that. So
can you address the issue? Here's another Social Security of claiming prior. This is Social Security to avoid Medicare rate increases. That might not be something you're all that. This is a hold harmless provision, Jill. We'll get in that later. Anything? I'm just looking through. No one really kept in caps, so it's hard for me to see the questions. All right, so just at the end of the day, what would you advise as you're sitting here? We got 200 people online right now watching. If you were to sit there and say, I'm in a conference room of a bunch of people who are interested in retirement planning, is there one or two takeaways that David Blanchett would like to be permeated throughout this room? If you had a couple things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's work as long as you can. People will want to retire, but I think that your options decline significantly when you leave the workforce. I think we're in a little bit of a different time right now where, there are more options for folks, but to the extent that you can work longer, that's like the best thing you can do to improve your outcomes. Delay claiming Social Security. And I think that, for a lot of folks that maybe haven't met with an advisor before, I mean, man, like if you had to pick one time to ever do that, it's right around retirement. Make sure you're in a good spot. Make sure you're making good choices, because if you get started off on the wrong path, it's kind of hard to course correct, especially when you make decisions around things like Social Security. When you do have like a year to change your mind ish, you don't want to make decisions that will really impact you later on in life when you have far fewer options around how to kind of accomplish your retirement goal.
Yeah, right on, man. All right, good stuff, Dave. I'll let you jump off. That's fantastic. God bless. Happy New Year. Bring the positive energy in the ether. But with that said, you got to call out people when they're being clowns. I'm sorry. There's too many people relying on us, the professionals, to tell like it is that we can't have clowns out there, taking the oxygen out of the room. So call them out, maybe a little bit more diplomatic than me, but keep doing it, brother. So hang on, guys. I'll continue the live stream, but David, appreciate it, man. I'll email you later on when this is up, and you can,
okay. Thank you. See you guys.
See you, man. All right, guys. So that was Blanchett, big fan. I didn't realize that